Hello, everybody. Welcome to the AV Geeks Lunchtime streaming show. I think I accidentally hit the button to make me go live quicker than I had intended, but that's fine. That what we saw before was some film cutaways for the Edwin McGill or the Edwin Gill show, which I have no idea what that is. It was probably some public affairs show, and it's basically panning over paintings that I think that the North Carolina Museum of Art owned. I think at the very end there's a little bit of a. We might go back to it at the end just to see the rest of it. But thanks for joining me today. We watch old 16 millimeter films, and so yeah, let's do that. First, let's have some fun in the forest.
The morning sun shines warmly down upon a forest, a national forest. In the deep, cool shade under the trees, Bob Scott, a forest ranger, is cooking breakfast. He calls to his sleepy daughter, Susan, that it is time to wake up. Susan awakens her cousin Eddie, who's spending his summer vacation with the Scotts. Eddie thinks it's keen to visit an uncle who is a forest ranger, who lets him sleep out in the forest and cooks eggs and cocoa over a campfire for breakfast. They ask if breakfast is ready, but Uncle Bob says no, not quite. There's time to look at the special wheel, which is helping Eddie learn the many uses of a national forest. Wood is one of the words on the wheel. Oh yes, we get wood from the harvest of trees in the forest. Forage is what we call the plants that animals eat. These cattle are on the way to the national forest to graze and grow fat. A forest is a home to wildlife. Water is still another gift of the forest. Eddie turns the wheel to recreation. Right after breakfast, he and Susan will start out with Uncle Bob to take a special look at National Forest recreation. It's a fine day to be out of doors. Blue sky with little white clouds. Green needles stirring gently in a summer breeze. The open places are abloom with Queen Anne's lace. There are many trails for horseback riding in national forests. Uncle Bob tells Eddie about one long trail where people can ride over 100 miles. That's a good way to enjoy the forest, Eddie says, but it's Shank's mare for us. Shank's mare is an old saying that means you get somewhere by walking on your own two legs. Slower than horses, but sometimes you see more. Oh, look. They're picking wild raspberries. Don't they look good? But Susan and Eddie can't stop now. Uncle Bob has them headed for a big National Forest recreation site. There's the sign that tells them a recreation area is nearby. This is one of the carefully selected areas that the Forest Service has improved for use as a picnic and campground. And there, a family is enjoying a cookout. A safe fireplace and a sturdy table are set here in the forest so that people can use them. Why is it that a hot dog you cook yourself always seems so special? These are campers. They've come to the forest to stay a while. A weekend perhaps, or even a week or two. Tents and chairs are comforts that campers must bring from home. The Forest Service provides the camping units, and each unit is planned so that a family can use it conveniently. Each unit has a space to pitch a tent, and there's a fireplace, and a table with benches. In most recreation areas, you will find that the forest ranger has provided a supply of safe water for drinking and cooking. Good citizens treat their forests with respect. They keep a neat camp. And because they have enjoyed themselves, they always leave the forest in a clean condition so that others who follow them can enjoy it too. They gather up all their trash, every litter bit of it. They put the trash in the can the Forest Service provides. Look at that cute little boy. Uncle Bob wants Eddie to see another part of the recreation area a short distance down the road. There is a regular parking area for cars near a beautiful lake surrounded by grass and trees. And there's a beach. Whee! Whoa! Susan and Eddie get right into the swim with the others. On a warm day like this, big people and little people enjoy a cool dip. Susan sees her dad coming in a boat. And now for a nice boat ride. Those people in the sailboat there certainly are enjoying themselves. Soon Uncle Bob turns the rowboat toward the beach. It is time for them to go home. He and Aunt Jane have a surprise for Eddie and Susan. A cookout of their own, right near the ranger station. What big, juicy steaks. Aunt Jane says it's time to bring their plates. good food, good company. A good way to end a day of recreation in a forest. And a good way to end the best summer vacation Eddie ever had. He's had fun and adventure. And he has seen a national forest at work, producing wood, water, forage, wildlife, recreation. And I hope that you, too, have learned why our national forests are called lands of many uses, and why the forest rangers carefully manage them and need everyone's cooperation so they can keep on producing all the good things they do.
This piece of paper, which shows up in some of the film cans that I have, says, "Stop. Do not rewind after last screening. Leave end showing. Stop." That runs counter to what that can that I have that says, "Please rewind." The reason being that a lot of big film libraries would get the film back, then they would inspect it and rewind it back onto another reel, inspect it, clean it, charge for damage. And they also knew that some people operating projectors didn't quite understand how rewinding film worked. And sometimes somebody would rewind it back through the projector, which would, if it lost its loop, which many projectors it would just start clattering and ripping sprockets and just doing all this damage. So some libraries were like, no, let us rewind it. You just put it on this reel that we included with it, and we'll take care of it. So there you go. All right, this film is a little intense, but it's about drinking and driving.
Tonight I woke up with a bad pain in my right foot. But the doctor says this happens to people who have had their right leg amputated. At first, I couldn't believe my leg was gone. A guy like me, who was always so active and always involved in sports, who spent so much of his time playing tennis or bowling when it was too cold for tennis. And when hunting, I could cover more rough country than any of them. I can't believe that at my age, I'll never be able to do most of these things again. All that first day, after I found out about my leg, I nearly went crazy, thinking about what I'd have to give up. And that's typical of the way I've always been, let's face it. All I've had on my mind was myself. Then something happened to make me forget about me and my leg. I forgot because I found out why Jim wasn't in the other bed. He was still in the operating room. Lori, my wife, told me they don't expect Jim to live. If Jim dies, it's my fault. If he dies, I killed him. I can't even remember when I didn't know Jim. I've got to admit that Jim was the steadier of the two of us. He got married first, after he'd also been first in getting a good job. They used to say you could tell the difference between us by the way we drove cars. Jim was smoother behind the wheel. Always felt I was a born driver. I'd never had any real trouble, and that was my trouble. Maybe I'd have gotten wise if I hadn't always been able to skin through. But I got away with some pretty bad habits, even when Lori was with me. Like going too fast in the wrong places. For instance, a neighborhood street where Jim used to say kids could appear from behind parked cars like magic. But the worst bad habit of all was thinking I was always as good a driver as I was sometimes. Like when I was too tired and ought to get off the road. I don't know how many times, especially on hunting trips, I was just plain lucky. It was the same thing when I'd had a few drinks. Again, I got away with it. Too many times, after a party or some celebration or other, I drove. And there must have been an angel on my shoulder. Until that one night, when the angel wasn't there. The night I took the road that always leads to trouble. Highball Highway.
As Tom's attorney, I filled him in on the legal end of it. About the tests and the analysis for checking out the alcohol in your blood when you're involved with drunk driving. Every skill, including the ability to drive, diminishes in proportion to alcohol consumption. With only 0.05%, that's about 2 or 3 drinks, you're not the driver you ought to be. As the blood alcohol increases, you become more under the influence, until everyone is affected at a level of 0.10%. In a lot of critical driving situations, when normal reaction time is hardly enough, a few drinks can kill you. What's worse, your drinks can kill other people.
Other people. I know there's nothing to it. But as long as that bed is empty, I feel that Jim will come back. If they put somebody else in it. Anyway, I didn't know anything about alcohol in your blood the other night. 4 of us, Fred, Harley, Jim, and myself, had been bowling, the usual for Thursday night.
Say, how about stopping by the hideaway?
I really shouldn't, fellas.
Jim was the only one who really wanted to get home.
What are we
He had an
waiting
important sales meeting early the next day. He gave in without too much argument. There's not much use wishing we'd gone home earlier. Except, somehow or other, we had more to drink than we intended. It didn't seem very long until it was closing time. And by that time, it was too late. In more ways than one. By the time I got out on the road, Jim had the feeling we should have gone with the others in a cab. And I was beginning to feel the same way. But I wanted to get home, and I wanted to get Jim home. We haven't been home yet. Maybe Jim never will. I don't really know what happened. I got around the car at an intersection, and... To avoid the other car, I skidded, lost control, and turned over. In a hospital bed in the middle of the night. Nothing seems right. Nothing seems real. But this is real enough. If Jim goes, what about Margie, his wife, his widow? What about his children? What can I do? He's got to be still alive.
Hello, Tom. I've got a friend of yours here. He's over the worst of it. He's going to be all right.
Thank God.
They say Tom will be able to drive again. Lots of people drive with artificial legs. And when he does, he'll have a better reminder than most of us. No matter how good a driver you are, there are times when you can't drive. When you're asleep. Probably even when you're angry or upset. And certainly after you've had the few too many that can maim or kill you. Or maybe what's worse, the few too many that can maim or kill other people. Tom can't go back and make it right. The only person who can do that is you, the driver, to whom as yet nothing like this has ever happened.
The unfortunate driver we've just seen could have been any one of us, even if we never drink. Drinking before you get behind the wheel is simply another bad driving habit. And any bad driving habit can get you into trouble. According to the experts in such matters, the first senses affected by alcohol are our sense of judgment and our sense of right and wrong. That other you, after a few drinks, may be personable and thoroughly charming, but that other you can't drive safely. Those same few drinks that bring out the best in your personality can only accentuate your worst driving habits. So stay out of trouble. If you drink, don't drive. But if you don't.
So Marcus Welby, Father Knows Best at the end. Robert Young. Yeah, so that's it was kind of a downer message, but that was part of a company that did Alco Beat, which was one of those drinking and driving demonstration films where everybody has a cocktail party at the beginning and then they get out on the racetrack and knock over a bunch of cones. And there's some other ones that they have. They use a lot of the University of California crash footage. Seatbelt for Susie is another one. And, you know, they just did a whole bunch of these driver's ed films. They're not the same as Highway Safety Films, who did all the gory ones, where they used actual crash footage and bodies and people in pain. A lot of this was simulated. But, yeah, it's kind of interesting. Here's another film about hazards in your life. This is Your Job, You and Your Boss. Now, when we transferred this film, it had a lot of problems. It had a lot of splices or torn sprockets at the beginning, and the color was weird, so I kind of brought the color down. And it's a little jumpy at the beginning, but it takes off. So This is a film from the late 60s to tell you how to keep your job with this person who's lording over you, your boss.
Businesses everywhere. People on their way to work. Chances are that you're planning on getting a job soon, or that you already have one. When you begin to work, you find that you spend a good part of your day on the job, and you see a lot of the people you work with. Of all these people, the most important one to you is your boss. Whether he's the owner of the company you work for, or the manager, foreman, or supervisor, he sets the standards for your work. And measuring up to those standards is a big part of your job. How do workers go about measuring up? Partly it depends on the boss himself. Exactly what are his standards? To find out, we interviewed a number of employers, and we found that they had different opinions about the fine points of doing a job. But when it came to general requirements, they pretty well agreed about their workers and the kind of work expected from them.
Well, Pat, what do you look for when you're interviewing an employee?
Well, I look for someone who is going to be helpful and cooperative, someone who can take a few orders, because after all, I have to follow my boss's directions. I want someone who will cooperate with me here at the store, selling, fixing stock.
I'd like to find someone that is industrious, someone that has initiative, one who is pleasant, can work with his fellow men, who can greet the public in a pleasant manner and perform his duties without extensive supervision.
Ron, what are some of the qualities that you look for in the people that work under you here?
Well, an interest in electronics, an enthusiasm to continue on with their studies, and it does require studying on their own, and to feel free to come to their foreman with the questions that develop on the benches and everyday working experience.
Mr. Gordon, what qualities do you look for in the employees who work under you?
Well, I'm looking for people who come in looking neat and respectable and who come in with the idea of doing an honest day's work for an honest day's pay. I want people who are interested in making money for themselves as well as making money for their employer.
First of all, a girl who is very dependable, and one who shows some interest in her work and asks questions, however, not too many questions, because then I feel that she's just trying to impress me.
Well, we look for honest employees with good personal habits, willing workers, and people that have the proper attitude, who, when they do make a mistake, are willing to admit it.
Well, what are the qualities that you look for in the people that work here, Doctor?
Well, I think the most important points are, well, an interest, a deep interest in the work they're doing, the ability to follow a set routine procedure, even though it may become routine after a period of time, and, of course, the ability to learn a new procedure at any given time, the ability to do things someone else's way, even though it may not necessarily be the way they were taught or the way they have learned.
Summarizing these interviews and others, we learned that nearly every boss has 3 requirements. First, he wants workers to be dependable, to arrive on time and to work willingly at a reasonable pace. Second, he wants workers to do the job well, to ask when unsure, and to take suggestions. And third, he wants them to do the job a certain way, a way that the boss himself prefers. These seem to be reasonable expectations, and by honestly measuring up to them, an employee can probably get along pretty well with his boss. But getting along means more than simply following a set of rules. It means understanding that the boss is a key man in his business. He has his eye on the goals of his department or his company, and he has set up rules and procedures that direct workers toward achieving those goals. Knowing this, the work relationship can be looked at from 2 points of view: the employees and the bosses. In our interviews, we first considered the boss's point of view. We asked employers about the kinds of relationships they like to establish with employees, and we heard answers like,
Well, I like to keep it on a friendly basis. I like for the employees to listen to my instructions, and any time that they see something wrong with my instructions or think something can be run a different way or a better way, I'm always glad to listen to whatever they have to suggest.
Ann, what do you look for in the employees that work under you here?
Well, I look for cooperation and means to communicate with the girls, and anything that they may have, we like to discuss it here.
So when something becomes involved or there's a problem, you don't mind if they come to you?
No, I like for my girls to come to me and discuss any problems they may have concerning work or any other personal problems.
I see. Well, thank you. It's nice talking to you, Ann.
It's nice talking to you, too.
John, when you're hiring a new man here, what do you look for mostly?
Well, I look for a fellow that has a sense of responsibility and is loyal and can't say good things to promote our business. And knowing mechanics is not the most important thing. It's knowing how to wait on a customer, how to talk to a customer, and knowing what to say.
Someone with loyalty and who enjoys it.
That's right.
Well, thank you very much.
this employer is reasonable about his expectations. And we found most of the bosses we interviewed to be fair and reasonable people. Perhaps they got to be bosses for being that way, as well as for being competent. Of course, sometimes bosses like this.
Mr. Morrison, what do you ask of your employees here?
Heaven help the man that asks me questions. They've all been to school. Let them find out what I want.
Unreasonable? Yes. And a person who works for this boss can probably save himself a lot of pain and aggravation by looking for a new job. Yet, there are as many kinds of employees as there are bosses. And there may be someone who can work well under this man's supervision. Those are some of the expectations that bosses may have. Reasonable or unreasonable, right or wrong, in every job and every business. Employers look for pleasant, helpful workers who can do their jobs without too much supervision. Workers with enthusiasm, unafraid to ask their bosses questions. Neat, responsible workers who study on their own, who are increasing their own earnings and those of their bosses as well. People who work willingly, admit their mistakes, and who it's good to spend a working day with. Who understand that the boss himself has problems that a willing, able employee can help him solve. From there on, understanding these expectations and getting along with the boss is up to the worker, to you. Maybe it's your first job, your first employer. How will you measure up? Our interviewer found that how people get along with their bosses is related to how they get along with other people in authority. For example, consider this young man's reaction to parental authority.
Wonder if I could talk to you for a minute. Oh, sure. We're doing a survey on parents and relationships. I'm wondering, when you were living at home, were you able to get along with your family? and accept their orders?
Well, you got to understand, my parents were from the country. They didn't move to the city till I was 12. They never had any education, and they did things the old-fashioned way. I just couldn't do everything they wanted me to. It would have been dumb.
Well, what about your schooling? Were you able to take orders from your teachers?
I guess I was an independent kind of student, but I had good reasons. I already knew what business I wanted to go into, so I couldn't see what use a lot of the courses would be. Every once in a while, I'd tell my teachers this, and sometimes they'd get mad at me.
Well, you've got your job now. How do you get along with your boss?
Well, I guess I'm kind of disappointed with him. He doesn't know the new ways of doing things. In fact, I've got a feeling that if it weren't for Paul, he wouldn't even be a boss.
But do you think you can accept his orders pretty readily, or is it a problem for you?
Well, I try to do everything he wants, but it's hard to take him seriously. Sometimes I just do it my way. He may not like it, but I think he's got to admit it usually works out okay.
This interview, and others like it, suggested that people react to their bosses in ways similar to the ways in which they've reacted to parents and teachers. So if you usually believe that your employer or supervisor is wrong, think it over. Ask yourself whether you tend to think that everyone in authority is perhaps a little wrong. The problem may lie not in the boss, but in you yourself. Assuming that your reactions to authority are normal, do you believe that this girl's attitude toward her boss makes sense?
Oh, she's really nice. She never makes any mistakes, according to me, and she's real easy to work with. I respect everything she says and tells me to do.
An interesting point of view. And it seems wise for a young worker just starting out to do a lot of listening and learning. But at the same time, he may prepare for a day when his relationship with the boss will change, when he has proved himself and maybe asked for his opinions or his help. This sort of trust comes with time, after an employee has established his loyalty and earned the boss's respect, perhaps as this man has.
Jim, how long have you been on this particular job?
About 1.5 years now.
And what is your relationship with your superiors, your boss?
Well, when we started out 1.5 years ago, although I wouldn't say it was a teaching experience, nevertheless I had to go to him for everything. I would go to the top of the building, and I would get the things that he wanted to know what was happening, and I would go back to him, and he would make the decision, and I would go right back up to the top again and convey his decision to the people who were involved. Now, after 1.5 years, he's allowing me to do a little of this by myself, on my feet. In other words, I'm up on top, and from the past decisions he's made and my learning how he made them and the reasons, I now can make them by myself.
In 1.5 years, this man has built a good relationship with his boss. A give-and-take relationship based on the facts of the job situation. To achieve this kind of relationship, you should understand that the boss has an important job to do. And it may help to know that the way you react to his authority depends to a large degree on how you have reacted to authority in the past. Once you know this, getting along with the boss becomes a matter of understanding what he wants of you, good performance on the job, and having you be pleasant and cooperative. Put these requirements together, and you have a pretty good picture of the average employer or supervisor. How well you work with him is up to you. But no matter how you handle your end of the situation, it's wise to remember the quality of your work and your reaction to his authority can have a lot to do with the satisfaction you get from your job.
Bill adds another letter. That makes a new word. Now it's Judy's turn to add a new letter and make still another word. Can you think of a word? Yes, words can fool us, and in more ways than one. Take this word. What does it mean? What does it mean to you? This word fooled Jerry just the other day.
Jerry, will you bring me the paper from the hall table?
All right, Dad.
That's easy. Dad brings home a newspaper every evening. He usually reads it at about this time.
Not the newspaper. I want the typewriter paper I left downstairs.
That's different. Dad was thinking paper for typewriting. Jerry was thinking paper for reading. But the only word used was paper. And the word fooled them. Here's another simple word. What does it mean to you? Make a mental picture of a plane. Is this what you pictured? Or is this what you had in mind? Take another word. Do you realize that this word means something different to almost every one of us? The word home is one name for these various places. It's also the name of an idea. The idea of the way you live with your family at home. Yes, words can have different meanings for different people. For example, this is home to Jerry and Judy, but it's not home to Bill. Now, from the radio,
send your order today for these powerful binoculars. You've seen them advertised in all the magazines. These powerful binoculars really put you up in the front line.
Jerry has wanted a pair of binoculars for some time. And these seem to be just the thing. Powerful. Here's what Jerry is thinking.
Powerful means that this summer I'll be able to tell whose boat is way out in the middle of the lake.
That's the picture Jerry has in mind. Judy, too, was interested in the binoculars. What is she thinking?
Powerful. Then they'll help me to see the colors and markings on birds and animals when I go hiking through the woods.
And what about Bill?
I could use some powerful binoculars to study the planets and stars.
So, Jerry and Judy and Bill have three different ideas of what is meant by powerful binoculars, and Jerry is sending for them. After a while, the binoculars arrive. They were advertised as being powerful. Are they? Let's see. What can we use in testing them? There's Bill's house. That'll do. Now, how much bigger will the house appear? Why, hardly any bigger. There'll be little help at the lake in seeing the boats. No, the binoculars certainly are not powerful, according to what Jerry thinks the word powerful means. Now Judy is eager to try the binoculars, and she seems satisfied. They'll help her to study the birds and the animals in the woods. They are just about as powerful as she thought they'd be. From across the street, Bill saw Jerry looking through the binoculars. Now it's his turn to look. Because he was hoping to use them to study the planets and stars, only Judy is satisfied with the binoculars. Jerry and Bill feel that they aren't what the ad promised. But just what did the ad say? Powerful, streamlined. These words are modifiers, and modifiers can be especially confusing, as we have seen. Now, is there anything we can do to guard against being fooled by such words? Let's see. Let's go back to the simple word paper and the way it fooled Jerry. When his father asked for the paper, Jerry assumed he meant newspaper. But doesn't Father usually read the newspaper downstairs? Since he's upstairs in his study, he probably wants the typewriter paper. And, of course, there's one way to be sure.
Dad, which paper do you mean?
I mean that typewriter paper I brought home.
Yes, we can save ourselves a lot of trouble by making sure we understand each other. But how could Judy and the Boerful meant in this case? They couldn't ask the radio announcer, and the ad itself didn't give any further explanation.
Do you suppose they deliberately used the word Powerful? A modifier that means different things to different people? You mean they didn't want us to know too much about the binoculars? I don't think so. It's just...
Maybe you're right. Remember, Judy? Dad told us that sometimes people use words in tricky ways. On purpose. He showed us a newspaper. Here it is. Look at this.
Yes, take a good look at this headline. Now, what do you think of Mayor Stewart? That he is a dishonest man? That may be what the editor of the paper wants you to think, but he doesn't quite say so. There's a question mark. When you read the full story, you find that someone expressed a personal opinion. But many people read only the headlines, and so they are easily led to believe that the mayor is a dishonest man. This is name-calling, another way that words can fool us. And name-calling is not confined to newspapers. Take the day after school when Bill discovered that his bicycle chain was broken. Harold came along and offered to help fix it. But Bill wasn't too eager to accept, because Harold was known among his schoolmates as a dope. Then Frank and Walter arrived. Frank was known around school as a wizard. He pitched in to fix the chain. This was the help Bill was looking for. He wanted no help from Harold. So Harold headed for home, wondering why Bill had rejected his offer of help and accepted Frank's. Words playing tricks again. Frank had a reputation marked by the word wizard. Harold had a reputation marked by the word dope. Actually, Bill knew very little about either boy, but he had heard people call them these names, and he formed his opinions accordingly, without bothering to find out for himself. And he was fooled. Frank was unable to repair the chain. This set Bill to wondering whether Frank really was a wizard. And if not, maybe Harold wasn't a dope. Maybe Bill should find out about a person instead of falling into the easy habit of name-calling.
Here's the trouble. When you saw the ad, you only read the headline, powerful. You didn't find out the details.
You can read the whole ad and not find out any more.
I know one thing. What the ad says about the binoculars isn't true. It is so true. At least the binoculars are just what I thought they'd be. I never believe ads. I always believe them. Here, you can see for yourself.
And we can see that Judy, Bill, and Jerry are having more word trouble. True and untrue. Always and never. Love and hate. Such extreme words are dangerous because they lead us to think there are only two possible courses of thought or action. Whereas actually,
I think the answer is somewhere in the middle. Some ads give accurate information, and other ads lead you to expect too much. In some ways, this binocular ad is true. In some ways, it's not true. Depends on what each of us expected when we read the word powerful. Anyway, I'd be better off if I'd found out ahead of time just what they meant by powerful.
yes, we'll be better off in many ways if we know how to keep words from playing tricks by confusing us. Think. If you hear or use extreme words like true or untrue, or other words of this sort, remember that there is a lot of room in between these two extremes. Avoid name-calling. Don't let a nickname trick you into forming a quick and possibly faulty opinion of a classmate or new acquaintance. Consider the purpose for which words are used. When you use words, be sure the other person understands what you mean, and you understand what the other person means. We use words by the thousands every day. Let's use them thoughtfully when we write and talk. Let's be alert to the varied meanings of words when we read and listen. Thus can we lessen the danger of being fooled by words.
That was our daily dose of Cornet. Yeah, I wonder if they show a film like this nowadays, as far as words that are misleading or the use of words that are misleading. Yeah, let's leave you with some TV trailers. These are little short films that were trailers, but they're short. They're like 30 seconds, 15 seconds, a minute. So they're not the length of a trailer you would see in a theater. They were the length of something that would show on television.
Peter, Mary, and Crazy Larry.
Hold on, baby.
You better run now, you better move, in fact, you better fly. Nobody gets away when it's smacking long before the night.
Dirty Mary and Crazy Larry. There's nothing they won't try. Rated PG.
Exorcism, the one last hope for the possessed. After you've seen the nightmare, we'd like to show you hell, where evil grows wild as Satan possesses in the devil's garden. Nothing lives in the devil's garden.
This is the story of the eternal rectangle.
Hey, will you watch where you're going?
The good guys, the bad guys, a hot car, and $1 million. The good guys have the car and the money. The bad guys have the guns and the muscle. And now they're gonna have it out. Out of town, out of control, out of their minds, and definitely over the limit. Stingray, rated PG. Stingray, crashing through at a theater near you this summer from Avco Embassy Pictures. Rated PG. Stingray, off the wall and on the road.
Hey, will you watch where you're going?
With $1 million, a case of mistaken identity, and 4 hot-tempered, heavily armed, and hard-driving lunatics who have no respect for the law, and even less regard for a car. Stingray from Avco Embassy Pictures, rated PG. Meet the boys.
Hi.
And a girl who'll break your heart.
Ow!
Your nose. Your neck. Your face. And she'll do it all for $1 million.
Everybody stay down! The girl is mentally ill!
In Stingray, the movie that won't take slow for an answer. Rated PG.
Get ready for the wildest cross-country trailer truck chase in the history of the American highway, The Great Smoky Roadblock, starring Henry Fonda, Eileen Brennan, John Beinert, Dub Taylor, and Dana House as Celeste Lay. The Great Smoky Roadblock. Rated PG.
pushing big old 18-wheelers down the highway. Before we got through with the ride, well, the fella get himself killed.
I'm being shot at with real bullets, you understand that? How you like that, fool?
See this story of two throttle jockeys who get into it up to their eyeballs and highballing. Rated PG.
And that weird bicentennial thing at the end. So yeah, a bunch of those were post Smokey and the Bandit, so there was already this amazing hunger for cross-country car chase films involving truckers, maybe not involving truckers, I don't know, you know, it's a magical time, Certainly Stingray is probably the great-grandparent of the Fast and Furious franchise. You know, films that are designed just to have car chases. We love them. All about just cars racing around. Thank you, Jim, for the coffee. One way you can support AV Geeks is buying us coffee. Go to buymeacoffee.com/AVGeeks. You can also go to avgeeks.com and see other things that we have, other shows that we've done, other things we've digitized over the last decade, probably. Also, just hit like. There's like probably some sort of button or star or bell or thumbs up or something. Just hit that. It's just easy. Even if you've done it before, just do it. And that somehow appeases the social media algorithm gods so that we can live another day. You can also hit subscribe. Your comments are always welcome. And then you can share what you saw with friends and family, especially if you saw something you're like, oh, you know what? My friend would really dig that one thing that they showed today. But thanks so much for tuning in today. And I'm not going to say, please rewind. I'm going to say today's advice, which comes from a film can, is, of course, stop, do not rewind after last screening, leave end showing. And oh yeah, that film, the Ed Gill cutaways, I must be thinking of a different film, because that just kind of ends with the picture of that dude that we were looking at before it switched over. Everybody have a great weekend, and we will see you again on Monday, which is our 399th show since mid-March of last year. 399th show is going to be on Monday. What am I going to do on Tuesday? I don't know. I'll have to figure that out. But everybody take care. It's always great to see you. And have a great weekend.